Golly, that's...
So it's a very difficult and traumatic experience.
And the amount of, as you talked about earlier in the interview, the amount of oftentimes equipment or other things that are hooked to a baby's
Right.
body. How many life
Right.
supporting mechanisms are in play? It's
Just to give you an idea, I mean, on an average day, just for a severe premature baby, it costs $77,000 a day
Oh, come on.
to be in that neonatal intensive care unit. And if you're healthy, 40 weeks, you know, you want your full 40 weeks, it may only cost $1,700 a day. And you think about it, if you're a healthy baby, you're in and out of there. But there's some who are there for, 100 days or more. So the cost on that family, the insurance, their employer, the loss of productivity for that mom. I mean, so there are lots of factors that really interest businesses like this
Sure,
one,
absolutely.
just due to the cost-benefit analysis part.
$77,000
Right.
a day. As you say, 100 days, that'd be $7.5 million.
Right. And these families can't afford it, and they just have to go through means. And as taxpayers, we help, or the hospital, gives the cost.
Right.
But one thing I'd really like to emphasize is that prematurity just doesn't happen once that child leaves the hospital or the neonatal intensive care unit. Everything's not hunky-dory, I guess, South Carolina word, but things continue. That child's going to have numerous physician appointments. They may have some cognitive delays. They need special classes, their physical and motor skills. So prematurity just it's not in the hospital, but it's a lifetime of struggles and accomplishments.
And as you say, it's not just the cost for the family.
Right.
There really is a cost for the workplace and for society in general.
Right.
A dramatic potential cost there when you think about the cognitive delays and otherwise. Even whether it's a minor birth defect that occurs or just the instance, which I was about to say the rare instance of prematurity, it really isn't. If it's 15.5% of all births, so out of 100 women, 15 plus women would have a premature baby. Now, oftentimes there are not all babies born prematurely necessarily have the depth of even another baby born. If one's born at 36 weeks versus one at 23 weeks, there's going to be a dramatic difference.
Right, but even if you're, there could be cerebral palsy, blindness, chronic respiratory problems, but even if you're born, 38 weeks, there could still be some lung development issues or things. The severity. And just a good statistic, I know a lot of people throw statistics out, but one that I really think about often is in an average week in South Carolina, in our state, which we're so proud of, 168 babies are born every week premature.
No way.
Every week. So this is something, and sometimes we think of those statistics and 168, but if you add that up every year, and on the front page of the newspaper, if it said, 8,000 or whatever, 8,000 babies were born too small and too soon in our state, people would think about it. But we need to think about the duplicative effect of what's happening in our state.
168 babies born each week.
Right. And everybody can take part, but one thing everyone who's watching this morning can do is just to think about their own lives and what they can do. If you're thinking about getting pregnant or you're pregnant now, I encourage you to go to the nurse or doctor and just ask them questions. As we said before, if you were born premature or your mother had delivered you premature, that's a risk. So know your family history. If you're smoking or doing drugs right now, it's important to discuss that with your doctor. If you have chronic illness, your weight gain, are you obese? Are there things you can do? So I encourage you to go to your doctor to find out, what are some risk factors I have and what can I do now to take those steps to reduce those for my baby.
Holly, do y'all have information on your website?
Yes.
That women could take advantage of, or parents, or even loved ones, husbands, as you say, or boyfriends.
On the marchadimes.com website, just the plain website, if you click on the Pregnancy and Education Center, there's lots and lots of information, fact sheets, what to do for every month you're pregnant, and there's great information for the dad, the mom, and even the siblings.
And I think the website also talks, if you went to marchadimes.com/South Carolina, you'd see some of the tremendous grants that are being made in South Carolina. And if not there, you can surely learn about it online, the opportunities.
Right.
How often are grants done, and how do folks go about learning more?
Well, grants are given on an annual basis, Greg, and our chapter, South Carolina, gives $637,922 back to the community.
Right.
So when you fundraise for Walk America, know that 95 cents of every dollar goes straight back on the streets to mothers and babies.
95 cents? Come
Yes.
on, that's a tremendous number.
There's a lot to do. We need it, Greg.
Golly, are you volunteering? My God, I mean,
No.
that's that.
Right.
Yeah.
So everyone can apply. We encourage churches, nonprofits, big businesses, health departments. If you have an initiative that's going to decrease premature birth and infant mortality, whether that's group prenatal care, a smoking cessation class, a class for Hispanic women, whatever it is, we would consider that in our application process. And again, that's at marchadimes.com/South Carolina.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned Hispanic women. Folks could go online to Nasrsano, I believe,
Right.
.com to learn more also if they weren't English speaking, to learn more about some of the risks that folks are faced with and some of
Right.
the things they could do to change their lives. What about the criteria for applying for those grants? Is that pretty difficult, Holly?
It is actually not. Probably, I would say, August, if you are interested, there's a letter of intent stage where you basically just say, this is my organization and this is what I would like to do. And we
Right.
have a group of volunteers who come in and say, does this really fit with the mission of the March of Dimes? Of course, we know that helmet safety on motorcycles is important, but that's not our mission. We're really focused on our mission. So anything dealing with mothers and babies and how we can improve those pregnancy outcomes have a wonderful chance of being funded. And this year we're funding over 41 organizations.
Is that
so
right?
I encourage everyone, especially in Horry County, to apply and see what they can do to make their mark against this horrible
Yes.
crisis.
We've just got a few minutes, Holly. I want to talk a little about 2 weeks from today, again, Lobby Day. Some of the
Right.
prime focus for that day, what are some of the messages you're trying to get? And then if we can talk for a minute after that about some of the real successes in '06 and since you joined the organization. But how about some of the big plans for 2 weeks from today, Lobby Day up
Okay.
there in Columbia?
Well, we realize that with the grants and everything, if we just work with the women one-on-one, we can't make a huge difference. That the advocacy and legislative and system changes are critical, along with the research, for us to advance our mission. And at Lobby Day, we're going to be urging the legislators to vote on the increase for the cigarette tax, to go towards Medicaid, to help women and children's coverage, and we're also urging for a statewide smoking ordinance. As I said before, smoke exposure is a proven risk factor for premature labor, for a woman to deliver too early. And so we're urging legislators to vote, instead of every city going out with their own smoking ordinance, Bluffton, Greenville, Columbia, for there to be a statewide workplace smoking ordinance for all restaurants and bars.
Golly. So there's two key things that day, two
Right.
big ones that you're really
Right.
pushing. The 100% statewide ordinance for a smoke-free environment, or smoke-free setup there, but also the 93-cent increase in the tax on cigarettes.
Right. In addition to that, we would like hearing follow-up. If a child right now is screened, all newborns have their newborn screening. They have the little blood prick on the heel to see, if there are any amino acid disorders right now. But if a child right now is screened, they look like they have a hearing loss, Greg.
Right.
44% of those children are never followed up.
No.
And so sometimes we don't even see that till testing time comes in schools.
Right.
Children hate that, and they're like, well, something's not right. And
Yeah.
it could just be a minor hearing loss. It could be a serious, they have loss in both ears. So we want to be sure that measures are taken so every child has a right to a healthy start, and so they get screening with the audiologist or whatever's needed to be sure they can go to school and function.
And are you all doing this in tandem with any other organization? I know the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind calls on Columbia a good bit, and I'm sure
Right.
they'd be very interested in
Yes.
making sure folks follow up well.
We're working closely with the Department of Health and Control, DHAC, and the School of Deaf and Blind. And then we're also working with the South Carolina Tobacco Collaborative on the smoking issues.
Good. I'm sure that's a sticky subject at times, particularly for Horry County tobacco farmers, and many of our PD viewers are farmers. That's a difficult issue, albeit it's not shooting the figure well beyond the norm. It is actually bringing South Carolina up to the national average.
Right. We actually have the lowest cigarette tax right now in the nation.
Is that right?
And that's just an atrocity.
Well,
And research shows that, states that have increased the cigarette tax and done the smoking ordinance, the restaurants and bars, they make it and they survive. And it's just for the health and well-being of the South Carolina families.
Right. Some of the big successes in '06 or since you've joined the March of Dimes Foundation.
Yeah, 2006 was a great advocacy year. Our main win was to ensure $850,000 in the Department of Health and Control. They have a budget item now for the Birth Defects Project.
Right.
And what that means is that now there's going to be a database with abstractors going about to keep in touch with who has a birth defect to try to see if there are any similarities or what we can do to still work on birth defects. And also we added tyrosinemia type 1, and I know that's a scary name, but basically it's just an amino acid disorder, and all newborns are now going to be screened for that when they're in the hospital. And for a lot of that's a low percentage of babies who actually have it, but if it's your child, you're interested in it. So even if it's that one child who screens positive, we're making a big difference for that family and society.
Obviously, in this position as State Director of Programs, as you say, it's difficult when you break down that 168 a week, trying to make sure that really makes an impact to the normal citizenry, that 168 premature births weekly. How do you go about? We've got less than a minute. Is there anything you really want to drive home, Holly, to make sure that folks understand the significance of that level of premature birth?
Right. To drive home, I would just say I would urge everyone to examine their risk factors, to know their family history, and to see what you can do, and not to get overwhelmed, but do one step at a time. And then share this information with your family members for that domino effect. And support the March of Dimes and the local chapter in Horry County, wherever you are, because you know that money's making a difference in babies' lives right here.
Absolutely. Great words,
Yeah,
Holly. Thanks so much for
you.
being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Holly Hayes coming up next. Community service, public affairs, research, education, the list goes on and on. That's why she's the State Director of Programs. It's a critical role. Holly Hayes is traveling all over the state to remind folks prematurity is something that you've got to think about every day. You have to think about it, or it's not going to sink in. You're not going to show up at walks and continue to raise money. You're not going to show up next Tuesday at the Hard Rock Cafe at 4 o'clock for the kickoff to Horry County Walk America. You're not going to show up at Lobby Day on February 7th if you don't recognize those numbers are real. 168 births every week premature. Women are impacted, children are impacted, families are impacted. Give them a call, 803-252-5200, 803-252-5200, or marchadimes.com/South Carolina. Get involved. Make a difference.